Hey everybody, thanks for joining us. Hope you had a good weekend, and let's go ahead and open it up. You're gonna unmute yourself, type in, go ahead and fire away.
Go ahead, Linda, then Barbara.
Hey, Miss Linda.
Hey there. Hi.
Hey.
Um, so interesting thing. I was doing a healing on Julian, who you know,
Yes, yes, yes.
and in light of something that you had said in one of the things last week, I'm not going to remember where, but you were
Mhm.
talking about the importance of the spleen for making sure that the spleen is good and clean because of it being a big part of the mechanics of our light and all that.
Right.
So her spleen was kind of clogged up with, not
Yeah.
surprising, with all the things that they've been going through. But I was working on it, and then I asked her to do the advanced Moses technique thing while
Okay.
I was working on her.
Oh,
And when I got to, I was working on the spleen, and it was kind of like being sticky and hard. And then as she got to like the navel center, it was like almost like magic that the spleen kind of seemed like
yeah,
it cleaned right up.
yeah,
And I wanted to check in with you
yeah.
and am I scanning that right? Is that what
You're
happened?
standing there right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Because
Kind
that
of
was
amazing,
really
isn't it?
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
So, okay.
it's and I love that you're doing them together because I mean, if you think about it, like even like in my early days, I would do one, like say I'd do the oil protocol, and then I'd go, okay, now let's do the healing. And as time went by, I started doing them at the same time.
Mhm.
You do the oil protocol while I do the healing on you, and I would try to line up what they were doing. But if you look at like here, what you're doing, you're cooking the kundalini for one, with that little dance between the navel and the Mingmen and floating it around. So that component is potent just by itself. But there's something to be said with the heart navel crown combination. And it's a variation of, like, with pH doing twin hearts. Behind the scenes, MCKS would have the instructors, as we would do the, activate the heart and the crown, he'd always have us touch the navel.
Mhm.
And there was never really any explanation given, but later when I found that mm, that's those instructions given in the Old Testament by Moses, and it's not as clear as your awareness on your heart. They do it like talking with plants, and they're talking about these two birds, but if you understand kind of the metaphorical talk that they're using, it's heart, navel, crown. Like, the two birds are the heart and the crown, and the navel they refer to as a bowl of water, like or a bowl.
Mm.
And um, just doing that technique. I mean, even sometimes with doing healing, or a lot of times when I talk to a new group, like, you want to be able to produce a fast result to people to kind of get their attention, that, we're not just talking about oils, we're talking about oils and how to apply them. And doing that thing with just the heart, navel, and crown, like, it usually would blow their doors off. Like, they would be, I had a bad shoulder, now I can move it. I had this, and like I can bend over and touch my toes now, whatever it is. And combining that with doing your normal healing, I mean, you just cover so much more ground so quickly. And when we're talking about it, I think I said in the notes or the lecture or something, like, it cleans the chakras. I mean, it literally just flushes everything out of all the chakras. And the spleen being a little bit harder to treat, it's usually, like you said, it's gunked up, it takes some digging. And even with that, uh, energizing it, it can be a little twitchy. Like, you can over energize it very easily. And so, you don't have that issue when doing this particular protocol. And the other thing that I find interesting about the spleen is, it's your overall vitality, and it kind of helps the aura to light up, especially real close to the body. But also when you're doing deeper work on the diaphragm, the diaphragm is really tied to the front and back solar plexus, but more the back solar plexus than anything. And, it's not just a muscle, and it's not just respiration. There is like a regulating effect when the diaphragm is functioning properly on, fight, flight, and rest and repair. And when it's out of whack, or whatever you want to call it, as much as you try to get the body to calm down, it's really kind of hard to do. And so when you start working on trying to release the diaphragm, you're having to do the diaphragm and you're having to do the neck really kind of at the same time, because they're elevating the rib cage to breathe. You'll reach like a point where you hit like a wall or a glass ceiling or something, where you're just like you're kind of unwinding it, and you're unwinding it, and then boom, you hit something. The key to going deeper on the diaphragm is actually working the spleen. If you really work the spleen, it really lets the diaphragm out, and then you can clean it out more, and then you go back and check the spleen. And so the culmination of all of that, I think, could be just a protocol unto itself. A lot of the protocols, especially when they're patterns, it was always my intention that if somebody was using oils, which is how we're putting them forward, they can go through and treat things with it. But if you were doing energy work, you could follow the same patterns, and kind of, you might have to figure out what kind of colored energy or whatever you're using. But even with this thing that we're doing with the Auric programming and the somatic programming, the somatic programming is, we've talked kind of a bit about the Auric programming, but the somatic programming, we're going to kind of start teaching it a little bit even this weekend, like with the free day. I'm going to start teaching people how to activate the parts to do the somatic programming. But, part of what you're doing is you're releasing energy down into the earth, and you're drawing up a certain kind of energy that directs it to the different body parts. And so doing the Auric programming, the Moses technique, and this somatic programming, I mean, it will be a game changer for you with doing your healings. Like, it will just be so much happens so quickly that you can go deeper and really start to cause like physiological changes or shifts that would take a very long time. And sometimes the body is so wound up in a particular way, you kind of move it and then it snaps back, and you move it and you keep trying to like push it to that point where you can break through and make the shift. And with just a few simple pieces, combined with the energy healing, you can make a very deep shift quickly. And if you think about, like, in the early days, they don't really talk about it very much anymore, but in pH, with really serious conditions, what they used to have people do is do like twin hearts or large prayer. Mostly it was twin hearts at the time when you were getting the healing. And then over a period of time, that kind of fell away. But in the early days, that was anything chronic, you had them do that as you are working on it. And so this is kind of a throwback to back in the day, in the early days with MCKS. And, we're not doing exactly the same, but the Moses technique is basically like the Kabbalistic twin hearts. And, there's a Buddhist version of it. And, Samantha and I did the Buddhist version. Remember that the other night? And with the Buddhist version, instead of, awareness on the heart or whatever, you still put your awareness on the heart, but you don't really recall a happy time. You use a piece of amber, and then you hold the amber for a little bit. And then when you move to the crown, use a different tool to activate the crown. And then when you're mixing the two, use a different tool, and then you expand, and then you come back and use a different tool. And so I'm thinking I'm even going to teach the Tibetan version of Twin Hearts, but you're basically doing the Kabbalistic version of Twin Hearts. And there were higher forms of it that were talked about a bit, but they weren't really talked about very much with the public. But basically the stronger version was a different kind of Om, at the end, with bigger, longer gaps. And the navel got mixed in. And so I don't know that I ever heard of a recording, but sometimes when he would lead it, that's what he would do. He basically, like our advanced Moses technique, was like a version of what he would lead, kind of like at the senior retreat or something.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, with the Twin Hearts, at the end, when
Mhm.
he says, when we're releasing the excess energy,
Mhm.
and he says, put your hands up and bless the earth, because we're going to bless all the people and all the things and all
Mhm.
of that. In light of what you've been teaching us about blessing the earth below people's feet, I
Mhm.
had this awareness during the meditation last week when I was doing it, about the fact that at the end there, when he says, focus on the earth,
Right.
right?
He's
Bless the
talking
earth.
about the earth.
He's talking
Yeah,
about the
he's
earth.
talking
And
about the earth.
all these years I've been doing it, blessing the
Yeah.
people.
Oh, you and me both. Like when I had, and I said something to him, he looked at me like I was a 5-year-old that just discovered like 2 + 2 is 4. Like he looked at me like I've been saying bless the earth, right? But like, the intellect does weird things with it. And you're still blessing the people, but you're doing it via the earth. Like you're
Via the earth,
blessing it
right?
into the earth.
Yes.
And it always made me wonder, like, why didn't he emphasize that more or whatever? And there would be times, because we all had different backgrounds, and so we would ask different questions behind the scenes and whatever. And one of the things that I remember asking him was like, I said it as politely as possible, but I was like, why isn't there like more explanation and more like help in digesting it? And he basically said, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make a drink. Like he said
Mhm.
some version of that, it was a more of an esoteric version. And he said, um, basically at some point the teacher gives teachings and then withdraws so that you have to apply it and figure things out.
Mm.
And, if you think about, like, a lot of times we're not encouraged, in the early days it was experiment, try to figure things out. And there's always been a bit of that, but in the early days the spirit of that was very, very strong. And then over a period of time, everything started getting more standardized, and especially after he left the body,
Mm. Yeah.
experimentation was discouraged. Like it was not, the rules kind of changed. And I think that idea of, I mean, that's kind of what we do all here. It's based on this principle in tantric Buddhism. God, what is it? Vajrayana. And it means developing the cognitive ability to realize the soul or the Buddha nature, which they use, when they say Buddha nature, they're meaning the soul. They have different ways of explaining it, but basically that's what it means. And um, the process is done through having direct experiences rather than intellectual speculation. And so, like here, I mean, that is literally the definition of what Vajrayana is. And so, if you think about, like, here, we like have an experience, and then later we go, okay, let's talk about what happened. And then if, like, we start getting too in our heads about it, I'll go, let's not talk about it anymore. Because that process of having the experience and then talking about it after the fact is that is the way. Like that is the way that he taught, and that is the way that, anything energetic and tantric is taught that way. And also in deeper Kabbalistic practices is taught that way. And you are having your experience here where we've kind of talked about it, but you had this experience of like, oh, look at what happened. And then afterwards you go, did that really happen? Like that is the perfect unraveling of what's being taught. And, I try to build it into the format as much as possible, but it doesn't always have to be healing. It could be like in business, it could be in relationships, it could be just a person going through their own healing process and dealing with their family or things in the past. But the application is always kind of the same. And when you have those aha moments, I mean, it just is reinforcing that I'm doing the practice. I'm doing it because like when you're doing it from the point of view of like, I'm just doing a technique, I'm trying to make something happen. It's too intellectual. There's not enough intuition. There's really going to be little to no movement. And sometimes it actually causes a reverse of what you're trying to produce, because you're almost getting like a little like willful, like, and you're really limiting what is the potential of what can happen. And so, I would encourage you to do more of what you just did. Like, experiment with it a little bit and have people do a process. I mean, you could just have them do the Moses technique and you do whatever protocol, and it's going to go way deeper, way faster, and you'll get better results.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even just like some of us have to get together also and practice with just scanning each other while we do the protocols.
Right,
You know,
right.
do the oil
Yeah,
stuff, because it's like
yeah,
so much in that is like, what's happening now? What's
right.
going on? And it's so interesting to explore that. So,
Yeah.
all right. Well, we'll keep it up. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Yeah. Tell Judy I put.
Okay, I will. She might be here. I don't know.
And then go ahead, Barbara, then Channing.
Hey, Miss Barbara.
Hey there.
Hey, hey.
Hey. I have some dental work coming up Thursday and Friday. I think it's
Okay.
called scaling gum work.
Oh yeah.
And I haven't used lemon oil for a long time because I did that before my last cleaning and my gums bled like crazy. So I've stopped that.
Yeah, I would stop
And
like at least 48 hours before you do that, because I mean, it is a little bit of a blood thinner. I mean, I would probably take like galbanum and black cumin all the way up until like maybe 24 hours prior. If you're going under the knife, like under surgery, I would say 48. But with the gums, I mean, it's still a procedure, but 24 hours should be sufficient. And then after the fact, do myrrh, and then myrrh is like a mouthwash, like, just put several drops in. You don't have the myrrh, you could use a monk's anointing oil, or you can just go to the galbanum. If there's pain, you can also use clove, but you'll probably be okay. Like the myrrh should knock it out.
I didn't realize monk's anointing oil could be taken internally.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
okay.
You know what? Let me double
Anything
check. I
else
might
that
be. Let
anything else
me
I should stop?
let me double check on that just to make sure I'm saying the right one, because
Okay.
it's been a long day and I don't know.
I was thinking of
Yeah. No, it's monk's anointing oil. That's the one I was thinking of.
I was thinking of packing some bay laurel as a mouthwash, but the myrrh or the monk's anointing oil would be better.
Yeah, so the myrrh will, bay laurel is a lot better as an antibacterial. Like, eucalyptus radiata is very good, Niholi, but bay laurel and lemon myrtle. Lemon myrtle is one of the best. Like if you were wanting to make like just like a soap for your hands for like by the sink, like when you go to the bathroom or you're washing at the sink or something. lemon myrtle or bay laurel would be your best two choices. And lemon myrtle probably a little bit more just because it's a little lemony and it smells kind of like Melissa and very antimicrobial. But here you're wanting to stimulate the healing process, you're wanting to reduce pain. Like maybe the first day you could be using myrrh, but like a little bit later, if you're still worried about like, well, let's keep the bacteria down, then do the bay laurel like after 24, 48 hours, something like that. Bay laurel is one of the best things to use as just like a mouthwash or a gargle, just because it also cleans up the lymph nodes and all the lymphatic things. And the mouth is one of the dirtiest parts of the energetically of the body, and even physically, just because of all the bacteria and things like that. And so using regular bay laurel is good, but because of the procedure, the myrrh might be a little bit of a better choice.
Okay, thank you.
But it's also splitting hairs, and so if you didn't have myrrh, throw the bay laurel in there. Like, you know what I mean? It's
or
not.
the monks,
What's
or
that?
the monks
Or the
anointing oil.
monks anointing oil. Monks anointing oil is really heavy on myrrh, and so,
And are there anything else I should stop taking?
just like as a rule of thumb, I usually before any procedure, I usually have everybody stop everything except their medications, and if the doctor tells you it's okay with the medications, it's fine. Or if they, bring it to your attention. If not, your meds are probably fine if you're on any. But any sort of herb or like oil or anything like that, I was just to minimize complications. Dental stuff is usually 24 hours. Small
Okay.
procedures, 48, like serious surgeries, I even say 72 hours,
Okay.
Yeah. I had a client one time. I wasn't having him do anything, but he took ginkgo biloba, the ginkgo, for memory in the brain. But part of what that is it thins the blood and makes the blood move really, really well. And he took it for a procedure, and they had a little bit of an incident in his procedure. And I had told him, hey, you should stop taking stuff before your surgery. And I don't think I had him on any oils or anything, but he was like, yeah. And it was a little bit of an issue. Lemon can do it. Helichrysum can do it. Sometimes cinnamon and cassia can do it. Cinnamon and cassia aren't quite the blood thinners that like lemon or helichrysum are, but I feel like I'm missing
I
one.
know, I can't think of it.
Yeah, blood thinner.
Yeah, I stopped the lemon a bit ago.
Yeah.
I seem to remember you talking to somebody about Cypress,
Hmm.
and I've used that a bit on the gums,
Hmm.
a few times a week for a couple of weeks, and they feel different to me, but I
Yeah,
don't know.
so very good detoxifier, and it really helps to firm up the gums. And one of the things that you could say about Cypress is in medical aromatherapy, they'll refer to it as that it's for accumulations, but it's just for like when lymph is stuck in an area, like it can help with that, but also accumulations can be like overly dilated blood vessels where there's too much blood going into an area, like varicose veins or hemorrhoids or uh, just anywhere where the veins are really expanded. The way that they used to say it in the old days was accumulations. And so even if you have like varicose veins and you start taking Cypress, you'll notice that like sometimes the colored spider veins might diminish the color a little bit, but you know how you get those big veins sometimes, you'll notice that they start tightening up or firming up.
Hmm.
And so it was one of the things that I actually thought about for some people with long COVID. And we tried it a couple of times on a couple people that with like long COVID, you know how people would get like foggy brain, like you know, a lot of times foggy brain is poor lymphatic movement or something's off with the glands, the endocrine system, poor circulation, you know, something like that, or the neck is tight and the blood's not draining from the head like it should. Um, you know, because the heart pumps it up, but then the blood still has to drain down. And if the neck is real tight from coughing and stuff, it doesn't come down quite the same. And so, you know, long COVID, I was really kind of thinking out like, is that like the neck is too tight and it's not draining down, and so the blood is accumulating in the brain? Or with a condition like this where you have viral issues and then a lot of coughing and a lot of mucus and allergy, even though it's not an allergy, still the mechanisms for allergies can get kicked in with a virus. So that it's just like the production of mucus and all those kinds of things. And one of the things that I was contemplating is I wonder if the foggy thinking is the blood vessels up in the brain are just leaking a little bit. Like, you know, they get a little fragile and a little bit more porous and some blood starts to leak out, and that could actually cause some of the same issue. And so I treated a few people with Cypress. um, I didn't get amazing results. For one, like sometimes just having a couple people that I treat, it's like not enough of an example. Like, you know, my old rule of thumb, even just for a little slight anecdotal um, conclusion would be at least 20 patients. Like I've treated 20 patients, I kind of consistently got this result. And I think I only treated like 2 or 3 with the Cypress. And so one, I think we got really good results. The other 2 were like so-so. And so I just never really said anything about it because I wanted to be sure about it before I said it. And but it's that same idea of like firming up the tissue and preventing like excess blood or accumulation of blood, accumulation of excessive amounts of blood or lymph, poor moving lymph. It just helps to firm up the tissue. Like Cypress is one of the better, like astringents, you know, which is tissue like tightening, like it firms everything up. And so here we're talking about firming up like veins and capillaries and things like that. And so it should like detoxify the mouth, especially like you can rub it on the gums like above, like where your teeth, but I like to put several drops on the finger and then rub it on the roof of the mouth. And um, one of the things that I found very interesting back in the early part of COVID was that several people mentioned that like the roof of their mouth felt weird or inflamed. And again, you know, inflammation, but it's excessive blood, excessive lymph, you know, poor circulation. And so, you know, that would again be another reason why to use Cypress in that and not mix it with anything. Just let the Cypress do what it does. And Cypress is quietly amazing. You know, we don't talk about Cypress very much, but every time we use it around here, like Samantha and I will look at each other, I was like, why aren't we using Cypress more? And you know, I have an old medical aromatherapy buddy, and whenever I see him, which is not often, but he almost always brings up Cypress, and he goes, yeah, you probably don't use it very much. And I go, no, I use it a lot. And he goes, wow, not very many people like utilize Cypress the way that that, you know, you could. And, um, you know, I think that's a little bit of the issue with being so symptom oriented in our approaches. I don't think there's anything wrong with symptom oriented, but sometimes we don't look at what is causing the symptom. Not so much like I'm just trying to eradicate this symptom, but like, why is this happening, or why is this happening? Make it better, and it comes back. And you know, treating some of those underlying causes and factors. Cypress is a rock star, but very quietly. Like in a band, they would be the bass player, like, you know, just standing in the corner, being all quiet and, you know, doing their thing, but, you know, they're still, you know, rocking it. So
Thank you. So would there be a role for Cypress after the procedure?
I would use Cypress probably for 2 or 3 weeks, maybe daily afterwards, just to like clean up the gums, firm up the gums, keep them healthy. And then from time to time, you know, as a gargle. But I like to, you know, Cypress is very gentle. And so you can put several drops in and rub it all over. But I also like to take a few drops of it internally. Like uh I remember there was this one guy, you know, it's not quite the same thing. You know, here we're talking about the mouth, and I'm going to the other end, right? And he had horrible hemorrhoids, and you know, he was like, I think I might have to have surgery or something. I was like, okay, let's just try this. And I just gave him like crazy big dosages of Cypress, and within like 3 or 4 days, it was done. Like he wasn't thinking about surgery anymore. He wasn't. But it's that like firming up to the veins and the tissue and cleans up like the circulation. And yeah, it's very effective and very gentle all at the same time.
So it would be internal for varicose veins as well?
Varicose veins, and you know, sometimes some of the things that we're firming up are things we're not aware of. Sometimes there's things in the gut that need to have like the tissue firmed up, because you know, we're aware of like a muscle, or you know, the gums, or you know, something where the vessels are very dilated. And you know, we can monitor that, but that stuff goes on in your gut and you don't know, because you don't have the sensory nerves to be able to feel it. And so I like to do it from time to time, just to kind of firm up the gut. You know, any sort of over dilation of vessels in any of the organs, that's very super helpful. And the other thing that I like to use internal, just as like a maintenance thing for the gut, is helichrysum, because the helichrysum, you know, it does a bunch of different things for different conditions. But one of the things that helichrysum does, especially in the gut, is it cleans up a bunch of the mucus that can form in the gut that you're not really aware of, but it's there, and it's, you know, affecting your digestion and how you process food and how you're getting nutrients. And you know, your body produces a crazy amount of mucus every day, and sometimes it doesn't get flushed out. It just ends up sitting in the gut. And so yeah, it's just a way to kind of clean all those things off. Another one that does it too is annula, but you can actually get away with just inhaling the annula, and it will hit the gut. But I've taken a few drops of annula from time to time just to clean up mucus. And then the other thing that cleans up mucus in the gut that's not an oil is golden seal. Golden seal will clean up the mucus in the gut. Yeah. There's an old school herb that we used to mix with golden seal called sanicle. And we'd put it in with myrrh and mullein, and there was one other thing. I want to say gentian or something. I'd have to look up my formula, but it was just basically a mucus cleaner for the gut. Like you just kind of cleaned up the gut, and you know, you really didn't use it to treat a particular condition. You just used it for house cleaning, you know, just from time to time. But, you know, you clean the mucus up in the gut and you think, well, I don't really have an issue there. And you clean it up and you're like, man, I feel so much better. You know, you don't really realize how much the mucus and how like food and, you know, the things that you're digesting sometimes get impacted on the walls of the intestines and things, and can throw your digestion and your absorption off. And anytime you go through and clean that stuff up, you usually end up feeling a lot better. You know,
Love this tangent. You've got me thinking about leaky gut and whether either of these would be helpful for that.
Cypress probably would be the very first thing I would go
Yeah.
to, because again, it's firming.
Mhm.
You know,
That's what I was thinking.
a lot of times with leaky gut, you could use Cypress, and you could use like yarrow and German chamomile, but not daily, but just from time to time. But I also like to use Paracelsus applied topically to the gut for leaky gut as well, just because of how much it impacts the nerves and is very soothing to the gut. And a lot of times that combination can be very, very helpful. Do you have leaky gut?
I don't, but I used to work with clients who have it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're still welcome.
Appreciate this a lot.
For the application with the Cypress for what you were doing with the long COVID people, was it internal?
It was internal, yeah. Like I was trying to think of a different way. I had them doing it internally, and I had them doing the thing where they rubbed it on the roof of their mouth, like several drops rubbed on the roof of their mouth. And yeah, I mean, like I'm saying, yeah, I think part of the thing too is the two that one person we got really good results. The two that we didn't really get the greatest results, you know, they were in the middle of not feeling that great. And I honestly don't know how often they were doing it. Like, I think they did it from time to time, but you would have to do it, you know, daily and maybe even twice a day for it to really have an impact. But usually brain fatigue we would treat with, you know, opening up the neck and the shoulders, but using something like sage, or, you know, something that has a neuroprotective and reduces the brain fatigue. And that usually will shift everything. But anytime you're having like substantial headaches, now not migraines, but just headaches, and I would include this, like, not migraines are not neuralgias, right? Neuralgias would still be like at the base of your skull, or trigeminal neuralgia, you know, things like that. When you're just getting those like headaches, loosening up the neck and the shoulder, especially like the neck on the side and then here, that can be helpful. But usually using something like cypress or cedar. Cedar, I usually have people do it in the quadrants. The cypress, I have them take it internally. Sometimes that can make the headache go away. They're not treatments for headaches, but it's part of it is just that astringent quality, like, kind of pushes some of the blood out to drain down through the neck, and then, you know, back into the normal loop.
And then go ahead, Channing, then
Hey,
Denise.
Miss Jenny.
Let's get you unmuted.
Hey there,
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing well. I have two very quick questions. One is about an oil and one is about an energy center.
Okay.
So the oil,
Mhm.
what is the difference between arborvitae, and thuja?
They're similar. I would say they're a little bit more serious than like cedars, but like thuja, like if we look at their therapeutic effects, thuja is a little bit like the Marines that hit the beach. And then the arborvitae or arborvitae, however you want to say it, is a little bit softer, like similar properties, but not quite as intense. And so, like when you really need to jumpstart lymph nodes, like in certain like fascial issues where there's a lot of inflammation, or even like if you look at like cancer sites and things, like a lot of the lymph nodes are shut down. The thuja can really jumpstart it, where arborvitae kind of can, but it's not the, and things like thuja can be very aggressive towards certain kinds of viruses, especially things that are like the warts and things. Like if you put thuja on warts, it will usually, like, it doesn't do it immediately, but it will keep breaking down the wart, and it will make that virus go into will just make the virus become dormant. It doesn't completely wipe it out, but it can make it go dormant. And
Who knew?
yeah,
Thuja.
yeah, thuja. Yeah, the other thing with thuja is like things like skin tags. You can put thuja on that for several days in a row, and they'll just dry up and fall off. Um, So usually thuja is not something that you consider like long-term treatment for something, but when you need to make like quick shift in certain parts of the physiology, thuja can be a go-to thing. It can have some psychological healing. The thing with thuja is it can make a shift in the thought processes that's very, it can snap you out of something, but it doesn't really produce like a long-term effect. But like if you're in kind of almost, I don't want to say like a mental crisis, but you know how like you just get into these loops and you just can't get out of like the thought process. Thuja can kind of kick you out of that, but it's not going to eradicate the issue completely, but it can kind of pull you out of the water a little bit. And so arborvitae, um, still, they think of arborvitae as like maybe a little bit more potent form of cedar, but cedar is better used long term. But arborvitae is almost in between cedar and thuja.
Are they completely two different like species of plants?
Yeah, they're different plants. Uh, I can never remember what they are. I can look them up for you real quick.
So I'm wondering about the spiritual or
Yeah,
energetic part.
arborvitae is one of the ones where they think maybe it was like the true Christmas tree. I don't know. Like arborvitae is also referred to as tree of life,
Mhm.
but it's just because of the shape of the plant, not because of some deep mystical component. Um, it's more of like what it looks like, the shape of it.
Okay.
And so people, including myself in the early days, I was like, oh, this must mean it's some mystical thing, and doing a deep dive on it, it's not. um Let me just
Mhm.
um, yeah, it's thuja occidentalis, like OCCI, like dental and then IS.
Mhm.
So they'll even refer to it as like northern white cedar, American arbor vitae or vitae. They'll call that swamp cedar sometimes. And then let's see the arbor vitae here.
So that was thuja.
That was thuja. And a lot of times the terms are used interchangeably, but they are somewhat different. Arborvitae is thuja placata. So similar but different.
Yeah. What, so you mentioned some applications for thuja. Do you have
Mhm.
any suggestions on applications for arborvitae?
You would use it similar. I don't find it as good for like the warts and viruses. I would use it more like how you would use cedar, like however you would use cedar. I find cedar to be a little bit better of an astringent, but other than that, it would be very similar. So still a venous tonic, still good for stabilizing the state of the body, pushing it into anabolic state, which is not rest and repair, regeneration of the immune, the endocrine, nervous system, and the muscular systems. Like good for things like that. Still mixes the energy of the heart and the crown energetically, but yeah.
Mhm.
It's a little bit more potent, and so that's why like long term the chemistry of arborvitae is better used in an acute situation rather than in a chronic situation. Like cedar, you could use it all day long. Like you could go crazy with cedar. But I mean, if anything, it's just gonna make it pee a little bit. But other than that, uh yeah.
Cool. Thank you for that.
You're
For
so
some
welcome.
reason, I was drawn towards these two.
Mhm.
Not sure why.
Yeah. Well, there's oils that are fun and they're nice. Those two oils don't mess around. Like they get down to business. They're not wanting to play. Like if you could call a couple of oils Capricorn, you know, Thuja and Ayurveda would be Capricorn oils. Not because they're super fancy, but because they're just about business. Like they get down and take care of business.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So if Cypress is quietly amazing, what's
Mhm.
thuja and
Um,
arborvitae?
I'd say the way I used to describe Thuja to one of my buddies is like it's loudly obnoxious. Like how Cypress is quietly amazing. Thuja like grabs your attention. Like when you're working Thuja, you're working Thuja. And so again, if you're needing to really like jumpstart lymphatic, especially lymph node function in a particular area, thuja, hard to beat thuja. Now, if you're just trying to tone and clean up congestion in the lymph nodes, I do Baylor. I do Baylor all day long.
Mhm.
And thuja, you do not want to take thuja or arborvitae internally because the chemical makeup of them it's too strong. It's like wormwood. Like it's too potent, too strong. So you use it, and then when the condition starts getting better, you switch to something different.
Okay, now I'm a little scared to use thuja.
I wouldn't be scared, but like I'd say be respectful of what thuja does. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. And then you had a center you wanted to ask about.
Yes, something is bothering me.
Mhm,
It's the back part. It's
mhm.
the part between my shoulders. Can you have a look? And when I say bother, I mean that's the only part that I seem to like have some like itchiness and irritation.
You actually have some big giant cords to the back solar plexus, and that's the heart's trying to transmute it, and it's just getting stuck. Do etheric cords, and
Back solar.
yeah, you don't even have to think about the back solar, but like wherever you're having, like say you're having an issue at work, think of somebody sassy at work that you want to clean up the cords between you and that person. And that could be helpful.
I see.
Just focus on that person, or if there's a couple of people, do them one at a time. So the other thing sometimes, if you're having like we'll use the hypothetical of like, say you're having a difficulty with, somebody in your family or somebody at work or something, and use go back and forth between their cords and the protective web blend, and go back and forth, because the part of the issue of being able to release the cord is that the more that you can decontaminate or cut the cord is really dependent on how much you can switch out of fight flight and into rest and repair, or at least in a neutral place in the autonomic part of the nervous system. And so sometimes when we're having like cord issues, we're too much in the sympathetic, we're too much in fight flight.
Mhm.
And it's usually not emotional or mental, but the body gets wound up. And so if you look at the protective webs, a lot of times, if you were to break down and really go, okay, if I quantify and qualify the energy that's stuck on the webs, what is it? It's a lot of intellectual energy that has really little to no intuition. So it's like it's forceful, like intellect with no intuition is like abrasive and forceful. And the byproduct of it is it stimulates fight flight. And so when you go through and you clean up the protective webs, part of what you're doing is you're shedding off the intellectual energy, but you're shifting that part of the nervous system, and then you're allowing for a deeper level of release that can happen. So then when you go back and you do the purification with the etheric cords, you're getting a much deeper release from whatever that stress or drama or trauma or anxiety, whatever it is with that person or those people. Because like sometimes it's just the situation, and sometimes it's energy being projected at you, and the more that you can let that cord release it, you stop kind of doing a dance with that person or that group of people. And so that could be helpful. There's ways to make that deeper, but when you're trying to do it just to stabilize the situation, I would say just do like what we talked about. But if, say, you had this deep-seated situation that has been going on for a while, and you're just like, I'm not really worried about stabilizing the situation, I want to release it to break this pattern with this person, you would do the protective web. Then you would do mana, the blend mana,
I have it.
and then apothal yohola's balm. And then so you would do the protective web, like person or people, and then active situations, and then past events. And then when you come back to the mana and the apothal yohola's balm, you would do the quadrants of the aura. And then after the quadrants of the aura, tuberose, like follow up with tuberose, and do the quadrant of the aura, but do it like much slower than how you did the other ones. And then do the tuberose, but the 3 brain from the bottom up. That'll flush like it. The issue is if you do it too excessively, it will make you expel for probably a day or two. If you just do like kind of like how we do a normal protocol, the length of time. It will make you expel and then probably stabilize. But if you like really were to sit down and really work it, it could kind of go for a while, you know. And so I've never found it to be uncomfortable, but at the same time, I'm aware that it's happening. You know, it's not like, oh, you know, it's all butterflies and rainbows. It's like, oh, some things coming out of me, you know.
Okay. All right. FYI, Greg, whatever we, i.e. you, put in motion,
Mhm.
it's happening.
Yeah, good. Yeah, good. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you
Yeah,
for,
looking for, we can catch up when we talk about it on.
And just
But very good. I'm glad to hear that.
yes.
just because I know she has one, could she take the Kartika? Well,
Ooh,
it sounds like it would do
amazing.
something different.
Yeah, you could do the Kartika too. Like I would go through and do this process and then afterwards do the Kartika.
Ooh, yeah. Thank you,
Yeah.
Sam, for that.
Yeah.
Got it. Adding that to my notes.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get
Thursday
busy tonight.
Kartika.
Yeah. Yeah, we put that in the newsletter about that Thursday Kartika thing.
Yeah.
That's so great. Oh, on the etheric cords and protective webs,
Mhm.
can I use the body tonic version?
I would do
Or do you want to
protective webs.
do the
You can
inhalation?
put that on, but the protective web you really want to inhale. Eh, If anything, I'd do both, like inhale and topical. In a pinch and you just don't have time, slap on the body tonic. But if you're really trying to really break something with a person or group or situation, I would do the sustained inhalation with like focus on the people or the situation.
Got it. Just
The the body tonics will be helpful, but you're trying to do more. I mean, body tonics will do maintenance and then a little bit deeper, but here you're talking about not maintenance. You're trying to go after, like you're hunting prey. You know what I mean? You're hunting that jerk at work or that, you know, jerk at the Thanksgiving dinner or something, and you're like, I want this to be reduced significantly, if not resolved. And so, yeah,
Yep. Thanks for the game plan.
yeah, good.
And I just looked, and protective webs is in like 7 different previous classes too.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
it might be
excellent.
easy to find
Yeah,
a sniffer one.
Yeah. We're going to do a deep dive at some point. It's probably still about a month away. You know, right now we're doing a deeper dive on the Auric programming and the somatic programming. And I want to make sure that that gets digested because, you know, both are, there's 2 different pieces. You know, the Auric programming, we've done pieces of it, but we haven't done the full technique. And then the somatic part is this whole other thing that we've dabbled with, but we haven't done the whole thing. It's very potent very quickly. I want to make sure that that's down, but then the next steps would be, you know, doing things with cords and protective webs and things like that. So health rays, but in deeper ways than what we've talked about before. So,
And then go ahead, Denise, then Chris.
hey, Denise.
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Well, I'm trying to get well. Do you think you could just, it's sort of in my back of my neck and my jaws and my congestion in my head still. So I feel better a day or 2, and then I just seem to relapse back into
So tell
congestion.
me what the relapse is. Like producing mucus, coughing.
And more congestion. I really thought that cough was more gone, and I think overall it's definitely going on its way out. But the German chamomile really made me realize, oh my gosh, it was still really needing some attention.
Yeah, I would keep using the German chamomile because that is the thing that like this cold and flu that came around this year is it's really overstimulating the allergic response. So there's an excessive amount of mucus being produced. And so, just going after the mucus can be a bit helpful, but the idea of using something like German chamomile is you're trying to reset the immune response, or excuse me, the allergic response. And that's why you'll get a couple of days and then, you go, oh, I'm feeling better. And then boom, it snaps back. You almost got to like treat it for like a week or two and really break the pattern. The thing that you could do to maybe help it stabilize a little bit is, do you have any form of cedar?
I bought the Himalayan
Oh,
cedar.
perfect, beautiful. Keep doing the 4 quadrants of the aura with the Himalayan cedar, and that should help to stabilize the body. Because you're just trying to get the body into a deeper state, and just like how we're talking about before, if you can get the body to go into a deeper state of like an anabolic state, which is where the immune system, the nervous system, the endocrine system reboot, or like regenerate. If you can do that, the immune system will start regenerating and it will start regulating that allergic response, especially because it's due to a virus. Like the virus just goes in and it's like it was drunk and comes in and just starts flicking switches everywhere. And it just throws your body into this kind of chaos. And so the virus can be gone, but those switches have still been flipped. And so you need to kind of like calm the body down, calm down, start unflipping the switches and keep the body as stable as possible. And so the cedar usually will help with something like that. And so especially when you're producing a result, you have a few days and then you snap backwards. Some of that is you just got to keep setting the pattern of letting the immune system reboot, because sometimes it might be reacting to something in the body, but it also might be like hypersensitive or hyper reactive to the environment. And if you wanted to augment with something like that, you might try like a couple of drops of some form of frankincense in water and take it internally.
Okay.
And the idea being that the frankincense will make you less reactive to environmental factors. And so if your allergic response is like being hyper reactive or hyper vigilant, you're stabilizing it all these different ways, but the frankincense might need to come in and just make it less reactive to things in the environment so that it doesn't keep getting triggered.
Because I keep waking up every couple hours. I wake up. So
Yeah.
So you're probably right. I think that sounds
the cedar, like the cedar's not necessarily going to make you sleep better. Like it's not like you go, oh, I have insomnia, I'm going to use cedar. But if you're able to fall asleep, and even if you're just getting a couple hours, still, if you can enhance that sleep, you might stay asleep longer, but you're wanting to be able to go deeper into that anabolic state. And it really happens the best while you're sleeping. And so, you could do it all during the day, but definitely do it at night before you go to bed.
And is that with the cedar? Am I inhaling that and
Yeah, just inhale it.
Internally,
No, just inhale it. Inhale it and do the 4 quadrants of the aura.
Okay, and then German chamomile, I take that
would be internal, and then also inhalation.
And go ahead and use the frankincense as well, right?
I would, yeah, if you have frankincense, I would take a few drops of frankincense just to try to keep calming everything down. Yeah.
It sounds good. It's a good plan. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're so welcome.
I appreciate it.
And then go ahead, Chris and Sonia.
Hey, Chris.
Thanks, Sam. Hey, Greg.
Hey.
Hey, on the conversation about difficulty in releasing cords,
Mhm.
The thyroid cord, protective web, and
Mhm.
such. What if the source of the cord is the person I'm working on? Would that same process help?
Yeah, well, it wouldn't matter. You know, because like even if you're not doing even if you're not working with oils, like the oils are the easiest way to shift that part of the nervous system. But
Mhm.
even if not, like MCKS would talk about, like, at some point, how, like, after you're done doing healing, you go, okay, now cut the cord.
Mhm.
At some point, when the nervous system becomes balanced enough and you're able to go into that more um, intuitive state, you don't have to cut the cord anymore because it just falls away.
Got
Right.
it.
So, like, anytime you're having that issue, you always want to increase or enhance parasympathetic activity, which is like vagus nerve. So going back to like tarragon, anise, marjoram, sage, any of the things that, even rue, how it works is to stimulate parasympathetic activity. And so that's why it releases the cord, right?
Mhm.
And so again, like, sometimes what happens if you're having a hard time and you're trying to shift the nervous system and it's not cooperating is you can always look at different things, but given, like, the nature of the stuff that you're doing and everything, the protective web component flushes things off of the webs, and
Mhm.
that by itself will shift you into a more intuitive state. Like, just, it's not massive, but it's enough usually. It's a little bit more work than what we usually do for stuff like that, because you're really, like, if you're having a particular issue with the person, like, I would inhale, kind of go through the chakras, even if it's just, 3, 4 inhalations on each chakra. Like, start at the head, work your way down, right? And then think of the person for a while, and then still think of situations, even if it's with that person, but still, like, think of work, think of things that might be stressors, like, and then like, flush it out, and you'll notice that it becomes easier and easier, because, like, when a cord gets worked up, be it that it's from you or from somebody else, it's excessive amounts of intellect with very little to no intuitive mixed in.
Right.
And so you're cleaning that up so that everything flows, because intellect is going to maintain whatever is going on, good or bad, it doesn't care.
Mhm.
In intuition, or the intuitive state, is about movement, right? So if you're trying to do healing, or you're trying to shift, or you're done and you're walking away, whatever it is, needs to be more intuition present, less intellect.
And that should help with their sleep, right?
Mhm, mhm. But even
Okay.
for you, like, like, if so you're having the issue with the person, or
No, so I'm working on someone, but the cord is outgoing rather than incoming, mostly outgoing.
yeah, it wouldn't matter. Like, ingoing, outgoing, it still wouldn't matter. I mean,
Okay.
sometimes something like resentment or anger can fuel the outgoing cords, and so then you can augment the treatment by having them use some Melissa or some ginger lily to transmute some feelings. And a good one for resentment, if that's what it is just good old-fashioned wintergreen. Wintergreen's really super good for
I
it.
love wintergreen.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. Really good for resentment.
Thank you so much, Greg.
You're so welcome.
Just really quick, in that vein, if someone should disappear, maybe I will need to come back. Is that where resistance comes from, the intellect?
Yeah, it's where resistance comes from. If it's built up enough, it's where defense mechanisms, which sound the same, but they're actually mechanically a bit different. And even the death drives are more of intellect, like how you would break those up, regardless of the approach, is you're just increasing intuition. Um, uh, but also, if it's if intellect starts to get, you know, how we talk about repetitive thoughts, like if the intellect is strong enough or has enough repetition, it attracts the elements from the environment and it mixes with that intellectual um, energy. Basically, like intellect without intuition, it lacks light. Like the light comes from intuition, not from the intellect. And if it's strong enough and attracts elementals and it mixes, it generates pride. I mean, that's what pride is. If you look at it mechanically, you know, a lot more of the pride is generated through the things we're connected to in the environment rather than just an internal process. You know, that's why we talk about like there's something in me, but then there's something outside that we're connected to, and we don't want to just treat me. We want to treat the thing we're connected to because we want to break the cycle. And in treating the thing in you and then the external, what you're doing is you're breaking down the intellectual energy, the energy of thought. You're breaking down elementals. You're bringing order to chaos, but you're diminishing pride or you're breaking down the pride, which pride doesn't allow there to be movement. Like the more pride somebody has, the more, and it's not just like puffy chest, but it's like just pride becomes a resistance and it just, there's no movement. Like they're just going to do the same thing over and 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 over again because it lacks movement. Pride is just, you boil it down, it's just lack of movement, lack of intuition.
Is there a good oil to help break the resistance?
The resistance, like you'll have to be more specific because this becomes multifaceted and there's not just like a simple thing. So what are we talking about as the resistance? Like, are we talking about psychological resistances, death drives, death mechanisms, psychosomatic issues? Like what are we talking about?
I think it's resistance to breaking those patterns, like she was saying, like just getting caught in and breaking the patterns. So there's a resistance because we know we want to break the patterns, but yet here come the patterns again. So it's like the intellect holding on so tight. I guess that's kind of where I was going with. Is that stagnation? Hi, Greg.
Oh, okay. So you're doing a little bit of everything with that. Some of the resistance actually, like if we're using that term resistance, so resistance is repetition, transference, repression,
Repression.
um, secondary gain, and then self-punishment or self-sabotage, however you want to say it. So a lot of that is still tied to the environment, but a lot of that is wound up in the diaphragm. And so you kind of want to unwind the diaphragm, but unwinding those kinds of energies, like pride, like when pride is there, I find that instead of going directly after pride, because if you think of the nature of pride, it is to push back. It is like kind of when we think of protection, we're thinking of protection as done with light or with the intuitive processes, which is going to be movement and the form, right? So structure or form or some form of something that the intellect is maintaining. But pride is a type of protection that's just trying to protect like the thoughts, opinions, attitudes, inadequacies, things like this of just the intellect. It's not trying to protect the body. It's not trying to protect intuition. It's just trying to protect like the thought processes and the things that the intellect has invested itself in. And so when you're looking at that, anytime you start to go after pride, it's this weird thing because it's kind of tied to like a bad form of protection. It's trying to protect like not accurate thinking or wrong ideas or opinions, or I'm not going to move to heal this, or I'm not going to evolve to, interact with this person in this relationship, whatever it is. So the more that you go at it, it almost sometimes makes it stronger, because a lot of times what happens is we use intellect to try to break down intellect. And it's like, yeah, we'll do that dance because it just almost makes it stronger, right? So the way to do it is to break it down, like deconstruct. So you break down energy of thought, and then you break down elementals, and then you break down energy of thought, and then you break down elementals. And then at some point, you're able to flesh out a deeper level of intellect. Going back to what we were talking about with the protective web, if you look at the webs and you look at the kind of color of energy that's stuck on the webs, it's mostly intellectual energy. It's not always yours. It's from other people. It's from the collective. It's from projections. And so once it's there, it doesn't matter how it got there. It's there, right? And so you still need to flesh that out. But the breaking down of the energy of thought, which is tied to the ajna. The energy of thought is used like the two things that I find are best are Mpepo, which is in the helichrysum family, Mpepo or acacia for the energy of thought, and then the elemental, like the breaking down of the elements, is Cape chamomile. And other chamomiles work, but Cape chamomile is especially good for this. And so, like, if you just inhale, like if you give Cape chamomile to somebody and you were just to watch them energetically, all of a sudden stuff just starts flying out their back solar plexus. Like it almost looks like the solar plexus gets big, and it's just like, like stuff's just coming out. It's just because it's starting to deconstruct something that's been holding there in a repetitive pattern for a period of time. And just the inhalation of the Cape chamomile starts to generate the movement, because you're starting to break the elementals free from the energy of thought. So you're breaking down the components that have been generated by the intellect. And so, and when we say all these things about intellect is good, but when it's in harmony with intuition. It's not that it's bad, it's just it's bad when it's left on its own. Like when it doesn't have a babysitter, it's like a teenager, like it's just naughty. But when intuition comes in, it has a very strong regulating effect on the intellect. And so the more that you kind of do that, for one, you'll feel better. You'll decrease a lot of body tension, and sometimes even, it's not like an achiness, but there's just this like little weird like sensitivity in the body that will break down. But what happens is it allows for like a deeper level of release, because basically what that is holding in, the pride is holding in, is just these things that we're not processing. So when you deconstruct it, it just comes pouring out, and it's not even like, oh, that's so upsetting. It's just like, feel something coming out. Okay, done. Like it just kind of leaves, right? And so the way to take that release deeper is then to go back to the protective web, and not so much with the cords, like the etheric cord thing. That's a variation of what we're talking about. The way to make that deeper is to use the protective web, and then do the mana, then the Pathu Yohola's balm. If you don't have a Pathu Yohola's balm, like a really fancy sage sometimes can be used in that. And then like I like to use tuberose to go through and just ice it off, like do the follow-up, because the thing with tuberose is it's one of the better oils for shifting like how you think or how you generate generate the thoughts, because the thing can get cleaned up, but if there's still a repetitive thought process left in the mind, it will eventually duplicate itself again. It might take weeks, months, or even longer, but it will still duplicate itself again. And the tuberose shifts it out so that as things are leaving, it almost like drags that stuff out of the mind and dissipates that as well. Deeper ways of going after like the psychological resistances, like repression and everything. There's a little bit more setup for each one of those pieces, but I think probably more of what we just talked about is more of what you're asking. Like when you're looking at like deep-seated psychological resistances, you kind of have to do some steps to even unwind the diaphragm to be able to release it. And then there's different, repression and repetition are going to be different things. And so out of all of them, the two hardest ones are not the psychological resistances, but it's the death drives and then defense mechanisms. And the defense mechanisms are of the basic chakra, even though they're like lower emotion, lower mental, they still have some physiological component to it. But those are like psychological resistances, like on steroids. Like they're actually starting to turn into like a disorder. Like when you just have like repression or repetition or transference or something like that, that's like it makes life uncomfortable and it makes things kind of suck sometimes, but it's like you're struggling through it. When you start getting into the defense mechanisms, that's starting to turn into like a personality disorder or some serious issue that a lot of times if the person's not skilled in how they handle it, it's hard to pull the person out of it. But usually there's some really deep like narcissist, like a narcissistic personality disorder, that is several defense mechanisms that are like building blocks that produce the narcissistic personality disorder. So if you try to go after the narcissistic personality disorder, you have to go after the building blocks. And then to go after the building blocks, you have to almost deconstruct the building blocks. And that's a bit more technical. It can be done, but my experience, it's hard to keep that person in therapy, to be honest. Like it can be done, but most people aren't dealing with that. Most people are just dealing with what we talked about or the psychological resistances and, usually like a little bit more of a deep-seated death drive or of some sort. And the death drive's just being, there's repetition is a psychological resistance, but repetition compulsion is a death drive. And so the difference being that the person compulsively keeps repeating the pattern no matter where they go. Like it's not like, oh, it comes up and I broke up with a girlfriend or boyfriend and then I dated somebody similar, but it's like, okay, you're not treating me crappy like you should be, so I'm going to keep poking you until you treat me crappy. And then I can go, see, like that's repetitive compulsion, right? Like they just keep generating the same scenario over and over. And even if people aren't participating, they poke the person until they behave in that manner, right? And then the drive to re-experience the inorganic is it's the Jungian psychological way of saying they're turning away from the light, like they're wanting to stay in ignorance, they're wanting to stay in it's not quite delusion, but you can see delusion from that spot. You know what I mean? Like they're really starting to get like detached from reality kind of quite a bit. And then the last one is the will to power. And that's just like people who everything's about a power struggle. And the way that I used to describe it to some of the uh, like when I was training psychologists to do ceremonial healing, it would be the person who always wants somebody, whoever they're interacting with, especially if they're close or like in business or in a conversation, they don't say it, but this is their behavior, is like bend the knee. I want you to bend the knee. Like you're gonna bend the knee and like bow down like they're the king, and if you don't, then it's like always a fight, right? And so that whole idea of bending the knee is just the will to power and just escalating something and not letting something to be, but everything is going to be I don't know, like you think about, you know, in the old days, like a country, like I don't know, say some country was going out and conquering other countries just to expand, you know, their territory. It's like wherever they went, they're going to make that country like them. Like, you know, say if it's the US or England, you know, you go to another place, I'm going to make this place you the US or England. Like wherever I go, I'm making England, England, or I'm making you wherever I go, this is going to be like the US. Like we're going to duplicate it rather than it's a different culture, it's a different people. You might have interactions, but you know, they're like you're gonna bend the will and bend the knee and bow down to what's happening here. And so that's more up on the left side of the brain. Yeah. So the resistances are in the solar plexus, the defense mechanisms are in the basic and sex chakra, and death drives are all up in the left side of the brain. Yeah.
That does actually help and answer one of the questions. Another one is, would that process, when you were talking about adding the protective webs, the mana, apotheosis balm, the tuberose, would it be the same as you said with the cords earlier? Where you added doing the quadrants and not just inhalation?
Yeah, so the protective web you would think of, do your chakras on your body, you know, just kind of breathe on each of the chakras, and then maybe emphasize a little bit of the basic chakra, but then do people, active situations, and then past events, and that's where it's really going to come out, right? Because what you're doing is energy from people, active situations, and past events is what's hit the protective web. And the web tightens up, and it's like you're still kind of connected to it somewhat, even though you've cleaned the cords, there's still Velcro on the protective web. And so what you're doing when you're working the protective web and going outside of yourself and starting to work the external is you're basically starting to push away the thing that's hitting on the web. And so the web keeps things from the outside from coming in, but it also keeps things from the inside from coming out, right? So part of what happens, someone comes up and gets really aggressive with you, your protective webs like firm up and go, that anger is not going to get to penetrate here. And then that person goes away, there's still some anger left on the protective web, and the protective web like firmed up to keep that out. But as the person leaves, it stays firmed up, that energy stays stuck on there, but now there's a greater like reduction in the amount that you can expel out, right? You know, because part of repression is super activated protective webs, and so by loosening that up, you just get to go and it's almost like it's not even like you need to work super hard. Like if you really work the webs, it's almost like you just get to relax it out. Like you just go and it just comes flying out of you. When the webs are really tight, it's like you have to dig and poke and and really grind it out. And so both are effective, but the first way is so much easier and so much quicker and can involve a nap on the couch, where the second one you really have to be active for a long period of time.
And so, and then the mana would be the quadrants of the aura?
Yeah, mana would be the quadrants, Apothel Yohola's balm, or like if I don't have Apothel Yohola's balm, I usually use Blue Mountain Sage. But other fancy sages will work, but Blue Mountain Sage is very, very cleansing for this what we're talking about. And then I'll follow it up with tuberose. And you know, the thing with the tuberose is, like I said, it shifts the mental processes. Other things can do it too, but tuberose is probably the easiest to access. Narcissus will do it. Osmanthus will kind of do it, not as well as tuberose, but it will kind of do it. And like blue lotus will do it. But out of all of them, I find that tuberose and narcissus do it the best. And tuberose is usually something that if you've had any of some of the classes with fancy kits, usually tuberose is in a lot of, I mean, how many you would say, like maybe half a dozen classes, tuberose is easily in half a dozen classes.
Yeah.
And so it's a bread and butter oil. Like if you look at pictures or tankas of Avalokiteshvara, which is the Tibetan version of Kuan Yin, right? You know, it's the one that has all the arms, like they're going like this, and there's like 1,000 arms, right? So Avalokit means one who hears, and then Ishwara means in the inner world, right? So one who hears and sees in the inner world. And so Avalokiteshvara or Kuan Yin is associated with the aspect of having your prayers heard and answered, right? You know, so your ability to step out of yourself, which is again intuition. Like that's not intellect. Like your ability to, like when you pray, that is not intellect. That is intuition if you're doing it right. Right. So you're expanding out of your normal way of thinking to allow something new, different, or bigger to come in, right? And so tuberose is worn by Avalokiteshvara. Like there's a big wreath usually of flowers around their neck, and it's tuberose. And so the symbolic teaching is when you want to step outside of yourself, or when you want to pray and have your prayers heard in the inner world, or to be able to step outside of yourself, you use tuberose. And so other plants can do it, but I can't think of one that works better than tuberose off the top of my head.
And with the tuberose, are they doing the quadrants, or are they doing that 3 brain up?
No, what quadrants?
Okay. So it's slightly different, the cord part.
Yeah.
And sorry, just with the Apothel Yohola's balm or the Blue Mountain Sage, is that just inhalation?
Yeah, it's still the quadrants.
It's
Yeah.
the quadrants, yeah.
Basically, the mana is working the right side of your brain, and the Apothel Yohola's balm is working the left side of your brain. And then the tuberose like harmonizes it and ties it all together. Yeah.
And then go ahead, Sonia, and then we'll go back to the other questions.
Hey, Sonia.
Let's get you unmuted.
Is it fixed now?
Yes.
Hey.
When you say cook the kundalini,
Mhm.
What is it you mean? What happens?
So with kundalini, like for us to be able to like move it or shift it, you know, it's circulating in the body, but it's a really kind of thick, heavy, it's like molasses kind of. And so even like if you're doing some sort of practice where you're circulating it or pumping it or moving it up and down the central channel, a lot of times we'll do it kind of fast, and it's almost like you're moving the fumes of the kundalini, not really the kundalini itself. When you really start to move the kundalini, I mean, it really will start to kind of rock your physiology, but you'll have an expansion of awareness quite substantial. And so the idea of cooking the kundalini or refining the kundalini is it makes it more fluid. So it makes it easier to move and easier to shift. And remember that kundalini, when it's moving, it's activating to the energy centers. So it increases the size and the way that the chakra pumps, right? Because like normally the chakras are going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then the kundalini comes up and the chakra gets bigger and it starts pumping faster. And if enough kundalini comes in, it's going faster, 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 and then it starts going like this. It starts turning into like a pumping station. So the rate that your body takes in and refines energy is much more accelerated. But also when kundalini starts moving up, it also cleans things up, right? So it will help clean up the blockages in particular centers and the body, and it keeps activating things as it goes up. And so the idea really is to bring spiritual energy down, to bring it up, because that also makes the energy more refined. But if you look at like when we're doing that Moses technique, we're activating the heart and then going to the back heart, going down to the navel, and then back to the Mingmen, floating it around, and then up to the crown. So part of what you're doing is you're cleaning up the centers, but because you've cooked the kundalini, you've moved it up. By the time the crown becomes activated, there's a descent of energy that mixes with kundalini and starts moving it up to a much higher rate. And so the part of why, like how Linda started the session with and said like these areas were really dirty, and I did that, had the person do the technique and all of a sudden they were clean, it's because kundalini started moving up. And so it activated the centers and started pumping the blockages out of the system, but it also then started to go even deeper and start to break up the blockages and expel it out. Yeah.
Okay. I woke up Monday really upset, and it's not clearing, and I'm get a bunch of brain fog. I had
something in particular, or you just felt upset, you don't know why?
I just felt extremely upset, and
But was it about something particular, or
no,
you just felt upset?
I got over COVID about a week ago. I did. I just felt upset. There's not necessarily, I think it's probably a whole bunch of stuff.
Okay. And is that stuff with your family still going on or not going on anymore? Or
It's still happening. There's going to be a hearing with, finally one with evidence, and we asked for the evidence last November, and we just got it the other day, and there was none, which I already knew was.
okay. The upset feelings are probably about that situation, even though it might not be in the conscious mind, still, you have a court date coming, like in a way, like, a storm is coming, even though it might go good or might not. You just know a storm is coming. And so
I think it's deeper. So it's stuff deeper. I mean, the court stuff is not that of a deep of an issue.
okay. Try doing the stuff with the protective webs like we were talking about. Because like if it's deeper, like that will help flush it out from the surface. And another version of this that could be good for like something that you're going through is do the protective web, but then go through and look at that blend on conscious. Like I'm sure you have it in some kit, and we can find out, or you can search the web, or we can find the website,
Mhm.
like the blend unconscious. You know, she's had all the classes, so
Yeah,
you
awesome.
you've got it somewhere. Do the quadrants, but with that unconscious blend. Because then what will happen is, like when you work the like you're doing kind of a form of the auric programming, and so when you work the aura like that, instead of having to dig it out of the chakras, it's just like almost like presenting itself to the surface, and then, you know, sometimes without even doing anything more, it will start to flesh out. But also, if an area needs more healing than others, like the energy of the aura will start focusing on that before you even get site specific. So like say it's your throat, you know, you go through and you do the unconscious and you might feel like, okay, everything's getting better and stronger, but there'll be a lot more activity in the throat area because actively trying to resolve that issue. And you don't even have to do it with intention. You just, by putting in the program, it's like this thing that just goes, okay, let's clean this up. And so do the protective web first, and then do the so protective web, people, active situations, past events, and then do the unconscious on the quadrants, the 4 quadrants of the aura. So whatever's unconscious is there, will kind of come out. And a lot of times, like when I've done it, I don't even know sometimes if like, oh, it's this or oh, it's that. It just something comes up and out and leaves, and like it feels like I had some, you know, evil groundhog in my solar plexus that just came out and got released or something. You know what I mean? And so you're just wanting to flush it out, you know. If you know what it is as it's going out, great. But if you don't, it doesn't matter.
You know, it's, I think stuff was coming from the last weekend's class.
Oh yeah, the elements class, yeah, definitely.
Uh, so I think it started then. Well, you know, it's a bunch of deep things that don't seem to go away.
Yeah.
Mm.
So you know how we were working with the different elements? Use air, right? Use the air element, and do also your arms and legs. Just the air, not any of the other elements, just the air.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And then we can post those in the chat as well, but I know if you want the transcript or anything like that, just email me, Sonia, so it's easier.
For those elements we did last weekend, does it also regulate them?
It depends on how you work them, but here you're wanting to put more of like that healthy element of air in the arms and legs, because it will improve mental activity, cognitive function. It will diminish instinctual responses and increase cognitive function.
Yeah, I have too much fire and air. I am very attracted to water.
Hmm.
I'm not sure how to get rid of the fire.
Well, let's start with the air on the arms and the legs. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. See how that treats you.
And then go ahead, Danelle, and then we have some questions in chat too.
Hey, Danelle.
Hey, Greg, I just kind of popped in. Are you doing something specific?
No.
Oh,
We're
okay, so
just
I can just
chatting.
ask anything.
Yeah, we're talking about super deep esoteric things, and then next we might be talking about mosquitoes. So like anything
Okay.
goes.
Sounds good. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
You know,
When I go on a
so
tangent, it sounds like I'm teaching a class, but I'm just,
yeah.
you know.
I know, I appreciate
Call
it.
it a free form. We're just doing whatever we're doing. You know.
Yeah, I just have a question. Okay,
Sure.
so since December, I've had several infections, so I've had to be on
What kind of
antibiotics.
infections?
What type? Okay,
like
yeah.
like colds and flus, or like
Well,
infections?
December it was sinuses,
Okay.
December and January, and then in February I ended up with strep, COVID, and flu and pink eye all at the same time.
Oh boy.
And I just feel like my I mean my immune system is just in a really bad place, and I'm hoping it'll start to get better here, but I know you
Do
have
you
talked.
have any autoimmune issue at all that you're aware of?
Oh yeah, I do. Yes. Yeah, I should have mentioned that. Yeah, I have rheumatoid arthritis, so I do
Rheumatoid.
take one autoimmune suppressant medication.
Okay.
Um, and I know you've talked about immune support as well as
Ye-
armor. I guess I was just wondering if
Yeah,
there's anything you
both of
recommend.
those, but I think like for you, is your body achy?
Um, it can be. It kind of varies. More
Okay.
when weather comes in, rain and
So we want to be able to strengthen the immune system but not overstimulate it.
yes.
And so for with an autoimmune issue like this, and so you can still use like strong immune oils and things, but you do smaller dosages over spread out throughout the day rather than a bigger dosage. So if you didn't have it and you go, okay, you're going to take cinnamon and you're going to do 3 drops right now. Instead of doing 3 drops right now, you're going to do 3 drops over 24 hours, or
Okay. Okay.
so that's one. But kind of one of the big ones is uh Moroccan thyme. It's very good for regulating the thymus, which is what regulates the immune system and keeps it from attacking the body, which is autoimmune issue.
Yeah.
Autoimmune just means the immune system's so overstimulated that it just goes, yeah, we're going to get viruses, we're going to get bacterias, and we're going to get your liver. Like it just starts going, like I fight. That's what I do. I just fight, right? And so
Yeah.
you want to be able to calm that down. And so the Moroccan time works really good. And do you happen to have did you take the foundation for mystical healing? Where it had the different colored healers like green healer, blue healer, violet healer.
No, but I have heard you talk about
I
those
would
different.
actually use like if you're wanting to go down the road of use those three, because it would be a way to fortify the immune system without being overstimulating, and it would diminish the inflammation that can settle in different parts of the body. And so rheumatoid can be in hands and feet and the spine. I mean, it could
Yeah.
be anywhere, but I mean, those are usually the hot spots.
It's usually hands and fingers for me,
Yeah, yeah,
definitely.
yeah. And so that could be helpful.
So
And
what were the three again?
green healer,
Okay.
and then blue healer, and then violet healer.
Okay.
And you can just get the little tiny bottles and inhale it. Like you don't have to be putting it on topically. And
Okay.
I think in the mm, let me look something up here real quick.
And I can purchase the tiny bottles.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
If
Yeah.
we don't have the tiny ones on the website, email us.
And we'll get
Oh,
them.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah. So I'm going to give you a mm, it's on my other one.
Okay.
Leave that for me. So sorry. I need to just start bringing it in. This is becoming like our routine. Give me just a second. My iPads don't always, yeah, they don't always communicate with each other. And
The Moroccan
Probably-
time, would I take it internally?
yeah,
or-
you would take it internal.
Internal, okay.
Yeah, and so I'm going to give you a protocol here with a colored 2.0. There we go. Okay, it's going right at you. It'll take you a minute. But...
Okay. So it'll be a sec till it gets
Yeah.
in.
Try this. This is more of a simplified version. Let's see
Right.
how well this works for you, but do it with also the Moroccan time. There's a much more involved process for autoimmune issues. Let's try this one first and just get the ball rolling. And then I'm glad to provide you with a more advanced version. But
Okay.
the other one will take you, like this is one that you could do daily very easily. The other one will probably take you over an hour to do. So let's start you with this, and then as you get used to it, we'll do the more advanced version, but that one you might only do once a week.
Okay, and then she's typing it
Yeah,
in.
so
then.
it's a little bit long, so I just have to make it into like a little PDF file that I'll share in the chat. So
Oh, okay, great. Okay, thank you. And then for the Moroccan time, that one is is like a drop three
Like
times.
two or three drops internally, like in water, like daily. And you don't have to do it all at once. Like if you want to do like a drop in the morning, drop or two in the evening.
Okay. And it
however-
doesn't burn, does it? Like regular?
It's a much softer form
Is
of
it?
time,
Okay.
and so
Okay.
it doesn't have the heat. I mean, that's actually why we use it for this, is it doesn't have the heat that like red time, white time, or spike time has.
Okay, great.
So it's gentler, like linalool or thiamidol or geranol, something like that. But this is the Moroccan time. You know, it has a big, long botanical name, but it's basically Borneo, and it's time Borneo, and it's a very soft form of time, but it's very good specifically for autoimmune issues. So
Okay.
it will still boost the immunity, but it will do it in a way that's more regulated.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
You're so welcome.
Appreciate you
Any
guys.
questions, email us and let us know.
Oh yeah, I will. Thank you.
You're so.
and then earlier when you were talking about the arborvitae or the thuja, this question came up for sebaceous cyst.
Yeah, I mean, you can try, but honestly, I've tried.
Is there something that you would use for super, not for in oils?
I've never. I mean, I would love to be able to say, do this. It would just be guesswork. I mean, you could try the thuja for that, but you know, I haven't treated it enough for one, with oils, and two, it would just be a guess, which I mean, I still do that. Like I still go, okay, let's see if this is going to work. And you know, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, but I can't say like, oh, this is probably going to be very helpful. it would be a thing that I would try, but I don't know. Yeah.
Back to the process, with the protective webs, the monopothel, that one, would that same process work on self-sabotage?
Eh, so some of the thing with self-sabotage or self-punishment, it would definitely get the ball rolling in that area, but sometimes there needs to be a little bit more adjustment on the back end. Like you might get the first like 60-70% kind of moving, and then after that, you know, there's patterns that we all kind of do, and then we take that pattern and we go, but I'm gonna make it unique to me, you know. So sometimes that last little 20 or 30% is unwinding the unique part. Sometimes it doesn't have to be done because it just unwinds. But the thing that I would say is why it's like, I'm going to make it unique to me, is we all have had different experiences, different levels or degrees of trauma, and different things that we're managing. And so a lot of times what makes that like a little bit more unique to a person is the thing that they're managing. And so it's usually trauma related. Um, uh, and so a lot of times if you unwind the trauma, the rest of that 30% will go. I mean, it never is completely gone, you know, because it's just uh, always a potential in the physiology, but it can be very, very, very minimized. And so it doesn't mean it doesn't pop up its ugly head from time to time, but it's very easy to knock it down. But if there's a deep thing in the unconscious or a deep issue that is like a trauma or sometimes, like I say trauma, but sometimes what happens is, like, say something happens to you when you're like 7 or 8 years old, 6 maybe. And yes, it's traumatizing, but really what happens is you go, like, okay, then I never do this again. Like, you know, whatever it is, like, I guess I just never play with my friends again. Um, there was trauma, but that declaration is like a viewpoint of the world. And sometimes what you're shedding is not the trauma, but the viewpoint. And when you shed the viewpoint, a lot of times the rest of that self-sabotage thing will pass, right? So targeting the trauma can be helpful, but that's why, you know, if we take a step back and we go back to why are we working the three brains? Why are we working intuition? Why are we working the different parts of the aura? Right now, we're talking about the auric programming and the somatic programming, but we also talked about structure, we talked about function, and we talked about the dynamic activity within the aura. So there's these different components, and a lot of times that declaration of like, well, I'll never be open with my friends because they hurt me, or, you know, because, you know, somebody did something when you were 6 or 8 or whatever. A lot of that gets undone when you unwind the auric programming, because it's just basically like another way of saying a belief or a deep-seated opinion or an idea or concept is a program in the aura. I mean, bottom line, program in the aura, or sometimes a program in the body, in the somatic aspect of your energy body.
Go ahead, Barbara.
Hey, Miss Barbara.
Hey, I have an odd question, but
Mhm.
as I go through the vital center oils and I got to corpus callosum, my eyelids started twitching a lot.
Hmm.
I don't know if there's something in that oil or it did it lightly with one of the other centers. I don't remember which one. And I
It, it looks like to me your back head is expelling really hard. And so maybe just clean it up with the back head oil. You know, either that or use something like
Oh yeah, I
thing.
feel it. I feel it now back
Yeah,
there.
yeah. Like
Okay.
some form of sage or even basil might do a little bit. Um, there's been times where, like, if I couldn't get something to flesh out of the back head, I used St. John's wort. And like if you have just like, single oil St. John's wort, you could use that, but also things like that pain soothe has a bunch of St. John's wort in it, and chocolate root cleanser has a bunch of, chocolate root cleanser has a bunch of St. John's wort in it. So if you don't have the single oil St. John's wort, then grab one of those, like maybe chocolate root cleanser, and then just awareness on the back of the head and just blow it out.
Okay, I'm pretty sure I have it. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
You're so welcome.
I see you have April calendar up. Could you tell us more about the Phoenix Technique 2.0 and the Auric and Somatic programming classes?
Which ones are we doing?
The next weekend, the Phoenix Technique 2.0.
Yeah, so Phoenix Technique, we're gonna still use the same oil. So if you've had the class, which I think a bunch of you have had the class, we're gonna do like a deeper dive. I mean, because some of the issues with some of the classes is we can only cover so much information in 2 days. And so instead of saying, hey, let's do a different class, a new class, let's just use that same kit and go deeper. And we're going to do like the next level or the next step of the Phoenix technique, which is a lot of cord work, but also it's going to be a deeper emphasis on the interactions with things in the environment and deeper levels of release with cord work. And then we'll probably start integrating things, concepts that we're putting forth now with like 3 brains and Auric programming and things like that. So there's that. Then the Auric programming, the Auric and Somatic programming, you're really being taught two pieces, but they work together. But there's 2 very distinct pieces here. And one is, the aura is the energetic mold or blueprint, right? That physicalizes things in the body, but also physicalizes things that is in us in the external world. And so what happens is there's some things that are going well, and there's other things where a bad program is running. And it's usually a byproduct of, like thought processes, trauma, projections from other people, traumatic event, even things like allergies or something can throw a chaotic pattern into the energy body. Exposures to things in the environment, the collective unconscious, there's all kinds of things that it could be. And so by going through and working the program within the aura, like say you're just targeting the respiratory tract, the respiratory system. Like I was doing something like this last night. We were doing a little experiment, and I was showing Samantha some of the things. And so I ran just like the Auric program for the respiratory tract, and what started happening, and then I did the somatic programming as well. And it's not actually a super long process. It's just kind of a meat and potatoes approach. But what started happening is the lungs got substantially stronger. I could take a much deeper breath, and every week I get therapy on my back, and I have areas where the lungs are, where when I broke my back, those areas are really wound up. And so I was like, I'm going to see my guy tomorrow. I'm going to see if he can notice something. And he said, I didn't say anything. He goes, oh, you've been doing a lot of stretches. Your back in this area has loosened up substantially this week. And I didn't do any of my stretches. I did the protocol, and it unwound that particular area. And what also happens is the areas like here we're focusing on the respiratory tract, the areas that are compromised, those areas start to go into a healing process. And so even if you're able to look or scan or feel, and sometimes you can actually just feel in your body, you can feel like, oh, it's my throat. What was I saying last night? It was my trachea.
Mhm.
Like everything was good, but my trachea, man, like I could just feel something going off. And then I started noticing like my breath has been off. And then within about 20 or 30 minutes, I was like, man, I'm taking a way deeper breath. Hadn't even treated the respiratory tract yet. I just did the Auric programming and the somatic programming. And so the class is going to be like, I'm going to teach you the process, but then there's going to be all the different oils that are for all the different kinds of programs, right? So basically, if it's physical, psychological, mystical, esoteric, it's going to usually fall under some aspect. This kit, it's the biggest kit we've ever done. It's I said in the flyer, I think I said 40 different oils. I miscounted. It's 42 or 43. Like, so you're gonna get this big giant kit of those little 2 ml bottles, and you're just gonna be inhaling them and doing this process. But there's gonna be an unwinding, a release, and then a setting of the pattern for the aura. And then you're going to do the same with the somatic component where you release something down into the earth. And then you're putting your attention on and you're drawing a specific kind of energy up for the earth to heal whatever particular system that you're addressing. And so by going through and working this process, it makes an energetic approach much more effective. It's going to make a symptom-oriented approach more effective. It can pull in where you're going to do like maybe more of a mystical approach where you work in like a planet and an alchemical process and still treating a symptom-oriented approach for a particular condition. You can kind of build these things as we unwind and present you with the information, this master booklet that's coming down the pike after we present these things, which I think even at the end of the month, isn't it? We're doing the plant product technique respiratory tract, right?
Yeah.
Respiratory system. So we're going to start showing you like the integrated approach and start giving you and that's a free class, by the way, like the manual to be able to go through and treat the different conditions from simple to like involved, to like very, very involved, where you don't have to figure things out. And we're just trying to make this kit like super turnkey so that anytime you're doing any Auric programming, you don't have to scramble around to find anything. It's just going to be in this little master kit that you can open up and then do whatever programming. And so they'll have the names of the Auric programming, and then like there'll be subcategories under it, right? So like if you're somebody was asking over the weekend, like, is there a Auric program for the cerebral spinal fluid? There's not, but there's a subcategory under the nervous system that would go through and address that. So you would just look up like, okay, what am I trying to treat? And then you would target like, okay, that's the Auric program I'm going to do. And then you'll pull it out, you're going to work it. And then you would follow either the next steps. But like last night, I didn't even like, I was going to go, I'm going to work my lungs and I'm going to work my diaphragm and I'm going to work my sinuses and I'm going to see how well this does. I did the Auric programming, the somatic programming, and I was like, I'm kind of good. Like I didn't even follow through with the rest because I was feeling so good. And I mean, it continued today. And so it's still a piece of something, but I would say even this as a thing stands on its own. But then when you start taking in the three brains and the things, how we talked about the aura and the structure and all the different pieces that we've been playing with over the last like year or two, is just going to be laid out so that a lot of times it's not just the symptom that we're dealing with. Like I can remember, I think it was Sonia was saying, like, oh, there's something much deeper. Like you have a presenting symptom, but sometimes there's karmic issues, there's there's things from other people, there's conflicts, or there's situations that we're connected to that are still impacting us, even though they might be 20 years from 20 years ago and far away. Like it's still, we're having a connection to these, and they're still producing anxiety and thought processes, and so yeah, all the classes in April kind of build on each other, and they're also standalones, but you know, I would say by summertime you're going to have a big fat booklet that is going to be simple to very advanced, that you can just look up as a cookbook and just go, there you go. You know, depending on how you want to treat. You know, sometimes you don't have to do the big involved thing. You know, you get a bug bite, you don't have to go through and do the word programming thing. You put some chamomile or some lavender on it, done, right? But, you know, deeper things, deep-seated things, you know, like we hit it, but we don't hit it all. Like, so this is going to come at it from an approach that is different, with lots of explanation of why to do the things that you do. So we got to jump over to the star. So thanks. Sorry we didn't get to do a protocol tonight, but great conversation, and hope you guys enjoyed. And we're going to do a little 15-minute blessing thing with Astara. So if you want to join us and get a little quick blast as you generate a bit of good karma and helping some others as well as helping yourselves, join us. It's usually only about 15 minutes, but if not, the ones that did the Mastering the Elements class, we have the study group tonight. And then Saturday is a free study group for beginners all the way through veterans. There's not even a kit. We'll make it work with what you have. And I'm going to be just teaching you some technique to enhance the things that are coming over the next few months. So it helps with integrating all the things we've been learning.